A starving German prisoner is led into an American mess hall. He expects shouting, maybe blows, maybe humiliation. Instead, a tray is placed in front of him. Meat, white bread, butter, coffee, dessert. He just stares at it. He does not reach for the fork. He does not believe what he is seeing. Then he asks the question that said everything. Is this all for one person? For years, he had lived inside a shrinking world, a world of ration cards, thin soup, stale bread, grease scraped from a pan, maybe horse meat, maybe worse. Now he is a prisoner, and somehow the enemy is feeding him better than his own country fed its soldiers. That moment was not just about hunger, it was a revelation. Because on that tray sat the real balance of the war. Not just America's food, America's farms, America's factories, America's trucks, America's railroads, America's oil, America's confidence, America's future. And in that single stunned question, is this all for one person? Was the quiet realization that Germany had been trying to fight a modern industrial giant with a system already starving before the war truly began. Germany's collapse into hunger did not start in 1945. It started before the first shot. On August 24, 1939, even before the invasion of Poland, Germany imposed rationing on food, coal, textiles, and soap. That detail matters, because it tells us something brutal. The regime knew it did not have enough. Not enough to sustain the population. Not enough to fight a long war. Not enough to absorb blockade, attrition, and time. The image many people carry of Nazi Germany is one of terrifying power. Columns of tanks, torchlight, marching boots, steel, and banners. But beneath the spectacle was scarcity. Germany did not enter the war as a nation of abundance. It entered the war already measuring soap, already limiting cloth, already preparing its people to live with less. And once the war widened, that scarcity spread everywhere. German soldiers on the Eastern Front were ordered to live off the land. That phrase sounds sterile, administrative, almost harmless. It was not harmless. It meant taking food from civilians, from villages, from families already on the edge of starvation. It meant the army itself could not be reliably supplied by its own system, so it turned outward and consumed whatever it found. By 1944 and 1945, German rations had become severely inadequate. Soldiers went hungry regularly, not occasionally, regularly. There are accounts of men eating horse bread, bread stretched with inferior fillers, sometimes flour mixed with sawdust, the sort of thing a modern viewer almost rejects on instinct because it sounds too grim to be real. But hunger makes almost anything edible. And when a state begins substituting fillers into bread, it is telling you something about its condition. Not its propaganda, its condition. German civilians suffered the same descent. By 1945, many were surviving on roughly 1,000 to 1,250 calories per day. That is not enough for health. In many cases, it is not enough for dignity. It is survival with the edges worn off, a slow draining away of strength, patience, and hope. And then there was soap. 1 bar per month for German soldiers. 1. A small fact, an ordinary item. But that is why it matters. Wars are not only lost in grand offensives, they are lost in little shortages. A blade not replaced, a sock not changed, a truck part that never arrives, a meal that gets smaller every week, a bar of soap stretched beyond reason. Even the German army's transport system told the story. The Wehrmacht relied heavily on horses, not because horses were romantic, not because German planners loved tradition, but because they had to. The American army used trucks. The German army still used animals. That contrast was not cosmetic, it was destiny. A horse has to be fed. A truck has to be fueled. A truck can move farther, faster, and more predictably. A horse breaks differently. A horse dies differently. A horse belongs to an older world. And Germany, despite all its mechanized imagery, was far more trapped in that older world than its legend suggests. So by the time many German soldiers were captured by Americans, they were not simply defeated men. They were exhausted men, hungry men, men who had been living inside diminishing returns for years. And they were terrified, because the propaganda they had heard about the enemy had been relentless, especially about surrender, especially about captivity. Many expected harsh treatment. Some expected torture. Some expected execution. That fear was real. And then they arrived in America, or in American-run camps. And the first shock was not kindness, it was order. Clean barracks, beds, showers, regular meals, a system that functioned. Even that alone could be disorienting, because it suggested stability. And stability was something many of them had not seen in a very long time. Then came the food, not scraps, not emergency portions, not thin stew stretched to the breaking point. Real meals, meat, white bread, butter, coffee, dessert. Things that had become almost unreal in the German wartime imagination. Things associated with another life, another continent, another possibility. Some POWs reportedly looked at American meal portions and said, "This can't be one meal." That line endures because it is not only about astonishment, it is about scale. The portion itself was evidence. Evidence that the enemy lived in a different material universe. Many German POWs gained weight in American captivity. Think about that. A soldier who had survived the war, crossed battlefields, endured retreat, and then become a prisoner, found his body recovering in enemy hands. That is one of the strangest and most revealing facts of the war. The prison camp was, for some, the first place in years where nutrition became normal again. There were stories that felt almost surreal. German POWs were taken to American grocery stores and stood in shock at the abundance. In Iowa, some walked into stores and thought what they were seeing was impossible. Shelves, choices, plenty. Not a staged feast, not a ceremonial display, just a store. Just ordinary American civilian life. And that may have been more shocking than the camp food itself, because camp meals could be explained away. Special treatment, temporary policy, a controlled environment. But a grocery store was different. A grocery store said this was normal. This was what ordinary people in this country expected to see. Abundance, not as privilege, but as routine. In some places, the freedom of movement and tone of treatment startled the prisoners even more. In Pennsylvania, there were cases of POWs walking into town with an almost disbelieving sense of ease. In Wisconsin, Oklahoma, and Pennsylvania, some later refused to leave America after the war. That detail says everything. These were not fools. They were men comparing two realities. On one side, a shattered homeland, ruins, shortage, and memory. On the other, a country so materially confident it could feed prisoners, show them stores, and still have enough left to fill every shelf. Some German POWs called American prison camps paradise on earth. That phrase sounds almost offensive when placed beside prison wire, but it reveals how extreme the contrast had become. For men emerging from deprivation, regular food and basic dignity could feel like paradise. And the Americans did something else that left a mark. They showed the prisoners where this abundance came from. Some German POWs were taken to Ford's Willow Run plant. There, they watched B-24 bombers rolling out at astonishing speed, one every 63 minutes at peak production. And they went silent. Of course they did, because there are moments when propaganda dies instantly, not slowly. not argument by argument. Instantly, a man can keep believing in victory while hungry, while retreating, while cold. But when he sees a factory producing bombers like a bakery turning out loaves, something breaks inside the illusion. The food tray in the mess hall and the aircraft rolling out of Willow Run were part of the same story, the same machine, the same civilization of throughput, the same industrial certainty. To understand why these meals stunned German POWs, you have to understand American military food itself. American soldiers were not surviving on fantasy. They were supplied through a massive, systematic apparatus. C rations contained canned meat, crackers, candy, coffee, sugar, and cigarettes. Individual portions. For one soldier. That phrase matters again. For one soldier. Each man had packaged food, standardized, transportable, organized around predictability. Not scavenging, not improvisation, not living off the land. A designed solution to feeding millions. American soldiers also had personal items German troops could only dream of in consistent supply. Razor blades, toothbrushes, multiple pairs of socks, changes of underwear. These sound like tiny comforts. They were not tiny. They were proof that the supply chain extended all the way down to the body, to morale, to hygiene, to the ordinary maintenance of a human being. The American GI was often described as the best paid and best fed soldier of all time. Not because war had become humane, it had not, but because the American state could pour extraordinary resources into sustaining the individual soldier. Even American sweets became part of the legend. M&M candies were invented in 1941 specifically for military use, with a hard shell to prevent melting. That is such a small, almost cheerful detail. And yet it reveals a country with enough industrial flexibility to innovate candy for war, not substitute bread with sawdust, invent better candy. The contrast is almost unbearable. And then there was ice cream. The United States military even had ice cream barges, floating ice cream factories serving Navy personnel. It sounds absurd. That is because it was absurd. But it was real. And that absurdity is the point. A nation able to place floating ice cream factories in wartime oceans is operating on a level of productive excess that its enemy is simply not prepared to confront. While German POWs ate steak in American camps, civilians back home were surviving on around 1,000 calories a day. While American soldiers opened canned meat, crackers, sugar, and cigarettes as part of standard issue, Germany was stretching flour with fillers and depending on horses to move supplies. These were not differences in taste. They were differences in systems, differences in capacity, differences in what kind of world each country had built before the war ever started. America's industrial production was roughly 3 times that of Germany. 3 times. That is not an edge. That is a verdict. The United States produced approximately 300,000 aircraft during the war, roughly 86,000 tanks, around 2.7 million machine guns. Numbers so large they begin to lose emotional meaning, but they should not. Because every large number becomes small when you break it into consequences. An aircraft means bomb loads. A tank means armored divisions sustained. A machine gun means infantry firepower multiplied. A truck means food arrives. A factory means replacement is possible. A replacement means loss is survivable. That is what Germany could not match, not merely weapons, replacement, continuity, depth. Ford's Willow Run plant became one of the great symbols of this transformation. One B-24 bomber every 63 minutes at peak. That rate did not just produce aircraft. It produced despair in anyone trying to imagine beating it. It meant American industry had achieved something beyond wartime improvisation. It had industrialized scale itself. and American leaders understood the meaning clearly. William S. Knudsen put it in unforgettable terms. "We won because we smothered the enemy in an avalanche of production, the like of which he had never seen nor dreamed possible." That was not boastful poetry. It was literal description. Hitler, meanwhile, had said in 1940, "An American intervention by mass deliveries of planes and war materials will not change the outcome of the war." It was one of the worst strategic misjudgments of the century, because mass deliveries were precisely what changed the outcome. Not all at once, not with one spectacular turning point, but relentlessly. Plane by plane, truck by truck, crate by crate, meal by meal. Before America even formally entered the war, it had shipped 5 million tons of food to Britain through Lend-Lease. 5 million tons. Again, the scale is the story. This was a country feeding allies across oceans before fully mobilizing its own combat power. An American division consumed approximately 700 tons of supplies per day. Per day. That figure is almost incomprehensible until you imagine what it means in practical terms. Food, fuel, ammunition, clothing, medical supplies, spare parts, paper, soap, tools, batteries, everything required to keep an army not just alive, but functioning as a machine. And here is the terrible lesson the prisoners began to understand. You cannot defeat a nation that can feed its prisoners better than you feed your soldiers. You cannot defeat a nation whose grocery stores look impossible to men from your front lines. You cannot defeat a nation whose factories produce bombers so quickly that silence is the only honest response. Abundance is often mistaken for softness, but in war, abundance is hard power. It means resilience. It means redundancy. It means mistakes can be absorbed. It means losses can be replaced. It means the individual soldier can be supplied not only with bullets, but with calories, socks, coffee, candy, and confidence. That last word matters. Confidence. A fed army fights differently from a hungry one. A motorized army thinks differently from one dependent on horses. A nation with full shelves imagines time differently from a nation already counting soap bars in 1939. And there was also the human side. German civilians sometimes described American soldiers as wonderfully mild-mannered men. Children crowded around GIS because the soldiers gave out candy and chocolate so freely that commanders had to issue non-fraternization orders. Think about that image. A conquering army so associated with generosity toward children that its own command had to tell it to stop. Again, this was not softness. It was confidence, a kind of ease born from plenty. German POWs were also struck by the way American officers treated them with basic dignity. Not friendship, not equality in every sense, but dignity. Orderly handling, rules, predictability, a recognition that even an enemy prisoner remained human. Many said they were glad to surrender to Americans rather than Russians. And when some later returned to the destroyed landscapes of post-war Germany, there were men who wished they had remained in America. Because once you have seen another standard of life, it becomes hard to unknow it. What the prisoners grasped, sometimes faster than their leaders ever did, was that the war was never just a clash of armies. It was a clash of systems. One system was built on coercion, improvisation, extraction, and fantasy. The other on mass production, logistics, agriculture, energy, and scale. One system put soldiers in a position where bread could contain sawdust. The other put candy in ration packs and ice cream on barges. One system told troops to steal from civilians. The other shipped millions of tons of food across oceans. One still leaned on horses. The other ran on trucks, assembly lines, and fuel. So return to that mess hall. A starving German POW sits before a tray. Meat, white bread, butter, coffee, cake. He hesitates, not because he is ungrateful, not because he is proud, because for a moment, the meal is too large to understand. It violates the rules of the world he has been living in. Then he picks up the fork, and as he eats, he understands something his generals never told him. The war was not truly decided only in Stalingrad, or Normandy, or the Ardennes. It was decided in the farm yield, in the truck convoy, in the assembly line, in the stocked shelf, in the bomber plant, in the ration tin, and in the terrible, simple fact that America had enough left over to feed even its enemies well. The tray was not just food, it was the whole war arranged in courses. And to the starving prisoner staring down at it, the truth must have felt impossible. Germany had not lost because one battle went wrong. Germany had lost because it entered a war of abundance while already living in scarcity. The Reich was beaten not only by bullets, but by bread.